The Lemonade Car Show is sponsored by OMVIC, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator. Welcome to the Lemonade Car Show. I'm your host, Lorraine Sommerfeld. I'm joined today by John Raymond and Chris Muir, APA mechanic. We are going to spend this half hour talking about somebody who I go to all the time for quotes because he's the industry consultant. In fact, that's his title, but Dennis DeRosiers supplies us with so much information when it comes to how Canada buys cars and what trends are happening and where it's going to go. And he leans into political areas, manufacturing areas, he touches on everything. And
he's the go-to guru of the industry in terms if you're doing product planning, sales planning, legislation changes. Dennis and Company tracks all the sales data month by month, is the crystal ball for what's going to be sold next year.
Well, I like because he's got courage. He will say exactly what he thinks, and he doesn't beat around the bush. Like, he will say what he's really on. Like, he's very good. He's been doing this for so long. And his website is really interesting. You've got to go into a lot of detail on there to see it, but he tracks the trends, like the SUV, CUV stuff, all those sales he saw coming.
Oh, he sees the trends way before, and he calls it the way it is, especially when it comes to BEVs or EVs and PHEVs, all those type of alternate source vehicles. He says, everybody's talking about them, but there's only 100,000 people that have bought them. So
that's where he calls out journalists, because headlines have to be crunchy. Everybody wants stuff that's going to get a lot of attention, and it often doesn't reflect what is actually going on now. And we're supposed to supply information of trends as well, so we all call Dennis and ask him what's going on. But he does strike that balance between what's actually happening and what's getting all the noise.
Or what we think is happening, and he tells us actually what is happening.
And it's funny what you can talk yourself into thinking is happening.
Oh, absolutely. That's for sure.
Well, I like to ask Dennis, is electric the future? He says, I'm like, well, we're told it is. Everyone's doing it. And he's like, yeah.
Count them in the parking lot.
Yeah.
The numbers say that everyone's not doing it.
Well,
we're fortunate to have him here. He comes on every year, and it's a sought-after show. We've got lots of feedback when he's on.
There's good information there. And it also kind of sets us up for what the information we're going to bring to you as readers and viewers. We use a lot of his numbers, and I steal a lot of his information. I just put quotes around it. But he's a really good source, because we need to bring viewers what's happening in the industry. A lot of people will say, if I buy an SUV now, is gas going to go up and I'm going to regret buying this vehicle? Same with EVs, am I going to regret doing this? So we get asked that, and sometimes it's hard because people will get angry if you've said, oh no, go all out and buy that Hummer, and then they're like that.
Or looking at legislation on used vehicles, how many vehicles are in operation, how many cars are on the road, how many used cars are being traded in. It's a whole segment of the business that if you're a manufacturer, you're always concerned about supplying new cars.
I know he'll come back. He's going to be on shortly, and he will talk about the spike in used car sales because the cars are holding their value so much longer, and that market has grown. Even as new sales are starting to come down a bit, that market's holding really
well. The price of new cars are so high, and like you say, cars, 10 years is not a long time today. In our parents' generation, a car was rusted out after 3 years.
Yeah.
You were seeing holes in it.
I remember that. We had to have a car for 10 years. That was how long it had to last, no matter what. And there was holes all through them all the time. But Dennis will be talking about used car values as well. He tracks all that and how long cars are on the road for. Some of them 30 years is an average in some brands, which I find fascinating. And we'll be back with more Dennis DeRosiers after these messages. The Lemonade Car Show is sponsored by OMVIC, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator. The Lemonade Car Show is sponsored by OMVIC, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator. Welcome back to the Lemonade Car Show. I'm your host, Lorraine Sommerfeld. I'm joined now by Dennis DeRosiers. He is Canada's premier auto consultant, and I'm very lucky to have him here today. Hi, Dennis.
Thank you very much.
In Canada, you crunch numbers. That's what you do. You take the stats and interpret them for the rest of us, which thank you for doing that. sales have been going up and up and up. What do you predict for 2019 here in Canada and possibly beyond?
Last year flatlined. They still hit 2 million, depending on how you define it. It's inevitably going to be down this year. The fundamentals are strong, and so we do not in any way, shape, or form see a free fall. But the market is going to be down, I don't know, 50,000, maybe 75,000 units. Now, let's put this in perspective. For 20 years, a great market was 1.4 to 1.5 million. And now, when we're down from 2 million, everybody goes, oh my God, this is the end of the auto industry as we know it. And I think that the industry, somewhere between 1.9 and 2 million, is still one heck of a year. Walk around this show today and you see the product. And that's really what brings people into the showroom and keeps the market going. It's product, product, and product.
Speaking of that product, most of it is huge. It's very big product. We've seen SUVs and CUVs, 75% of sales now, I think. Why do you think, and do you think that's going to change?
Well, I think you got to be careful on how you define. I was at the Vehicle of the Year awards this morning, the Black Book and the Auto Journalist stuff. 6 vehicles, 3 cars, 3 trucks, and when I looked at them 10 years ago, those were all cars. And today, 3 of them are called a car and 3 of them are called a CUV or an SUV. And so, I think the fundamental is to look at the engineering. And there's body on frame engineering, and then there's frame engineering. So this pickup truck right here next to us is a body on frame versus a unibody construction, which is most of the other product. And that's a better way to look at it versus these almost phony definitions now called car or a truck. I was talking to one of the guys today about luxury and premium mass market. And I can stand in every single booth at this auto show, and every product around me looks like it's a premium product. It doesn't matter whether I'm on the low-end brands or I'm at the highest of the high-end brands. So, this is a product-driven industry, and the product being offered to consumers is spectacular. And that's why the market's going to do well.
I think one thing I've noticed too over the past few years is the premium product you notice is not just in looks, but safety features are coming down really quickly to entry-level things. So everything from heated seats, but safety stuff as well is really being bolstered by the manufacturers.
Well, and the biggest words in this industry and some of the most controversial are the disruptor words, electrification and autonomous. And with autonomous being talked by everybody. And what's autonomous all about today? It's putting safety into your vehicles today. And this technology is flowing into the vehicles today. I think we're a long way from having fully autonomous vehicles, other than for very narrow things that you can do. And they may have an autonomous vehicle that takes you from your hotel room to the airport. But we're decades away from, dialing up or going onto your cell phone and getting a vehicle to pick you up at home and take you to work. But the technology being developed for them, active cruise control, lane departure, automatic braking, go down the list, there's 20 different technologies. You can find those in vehicles today. And another reason why the market is doing well is the technology is being admired and desired by consumers, and that draws them into the showroom.
You touched on vehicles versus trucks and how it depends on what the platform is. Sedans are definitely a different category, the four-door boxes. With Ford leaving the arena, it's been left open to the Japanese, basically. What do you think is going to be, are people coming back to those?
Inevitably. And I think you got to be careful. And you could look at it as a mistake, but then our factories are so flexible that you watch. It may take 1 year to 2 years, but they can turn on a dime. And those light truck factories that the GM, Fords, and Chryslers are talking about, that they're going to get rid of their car and put their CUV in or something, they'll change in a heartbeat. The factories are that flexible. And so I think it's probably shorter term rather than longer term. Four-door sedans, the Ford boxes, or the B and C size cars are going to be around a long time, and at some point, the way to differentiate yourself in the marketplace is to get into segments where people have not been for a while, and that's going to be passenger car.
So meeting them there, waiting for them to get there instead of trying to...
Yeah, and it's high risk. It costs $1 billion to $2 billion to bring a product to the marketplace. And so I think because of the cost of the technology and the cost to bring a product in the marketplace, companies are moving more and more towards let someone else take the risk. And once it starts to be proven, we can get there fairly quickly. 6 months to 2 years is a relatively short period of time. So we may miss the front end of it, but we also don't get into the risk and the cost of doing some of it up front.
So they need R&D, they also need crystal balls.
Well, I'm the ultimate crystal ball. People don't realize it, but I come to work in the morning and I sit on the desk in the lotus position, my desk, and then I elevate and I go 3.2, and everybody runs around and says 3.2.
We'll be back with more Lemonade Car Show right after this break. The Lemonade Car Show is sponsored by OMVIC, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator. The Lemonade Car Show is sponsored by OMVIC, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator. Welcome back to the Lemonade Car Show, brought to you by OMVIC and Crown. I'm your host, Lorraine Sommerfeld. I'm joined by Dennis DeRosiers. We've been speaking about the stats on new cars, but actually the statistics on used cars are very fascinating. What's going on in Canada with the used car market?
It's possibly the most exciting part of our marketplace right now, hard to believe. There was a day and age when you bought a used car, you were buying someone else's problem. And what are the three words that kind of, other than product, product, and product, the three words that have defined this industry now for 20, 30 years? It's quality, quality, and quality. And with this explosion in our market that we talked about in the first section, going from 1.415 million up into the 2 million range, we have just an absolute ton of product heading towards the used car market. And it is exploding with activity. And that's brought in a lot of sophisticated players. And so you're looking at all kinds of different formats for buying a used car, not just a car dealer, but you can go to these used car superstores, there's used car showrooms. You're buying a much higher quality product. Vehicles today last twice as long as going back only to the year 2000 versus today. Twice as long. So think about it, back in the year 2000, you buy yourself a 4-year-old used car, you might be getting another 100 to 150,000 kilometers of use. You buy yourself a 4-year-old used car today, and you're getting another 200 to 300,000 kilometers of use. That's a good deal, given the lack of depreciation and things like that.
It's a great deal. I think that market, you're right, is the most exciting market. So let me ask you this then. We're also having a problem with negative equity, which means people are trading in their cars still owing a lot of money on them. These cars are good. They've never been made better. They're lasting longer than ever. Why are we seeing people trading in really good vehicles only to keep themselves further in debt? And what impact could that have on the market?
Let me touch the negative equity. Everybody, without exception, that has a loan has negative equity for a certain length of time. If you have a high resale value, that negative equity is a shorter period of time. If you have a low resale value, it has a longer period of time. And that's the importance of asking your dealer and looking up the stats about resale values. Canadian Black Book has really good data on that. Why do they get out of their loans early? An awful lot of it is family change. So if you have that, 2-seater coupe or a small sedan, and you end up with one child, two child, you're into a bigger vehicle, not necessarily a minivan, is possible, but certainly SUV and things like that. The technology that's coming in, stupidity. I get a call all the time from, I traded my vehicle in and there's $7,000 in negative equity in it, and my God, well, why did you trade your vehicle in? There isn't a vehicle sold in Canada that if you pay your loan off to its very end, or lease off to the very end, that it has negative equity. And that's what you got to learn how to do.
Well, sometimes I wonder if the manufacturers aren't getting so good at selling us things that people want the new shiny thing. My dad used to buy a car, it had to last 10 years. Even if it didn't, it had to last 10 years, and you paid cash for it. Do you think we're getting a little more throwaway or a little more, I don't want to say consumerism, but there's so many, they want new all the time.
Well, and buy new now, and it's the theme of every car dealer. But a car dealer makes as much gross profit on a new vehicle as a used vehicle. Maybe a little less on used than new. why would you try to sell the new when you can make the same amount of money selling used? And sometimes used is going to be a lot easier to sell because there's a good chance that it's a third to half the price or even less than the new product. The technology may be 3, 4, 5 years old, but the technology versus the 8 or 10 or 12-year-old vehicle they're trading in is quite spectacular. And so it's a combination of things. I'm hesitant to put the blame solely on any particular party, be it the vehicle companies, the car dealers, or the consumer, about some of the situations, the negative situations we get into. But boy, it needs to be shared if they're looking for blame.
Okay, I'm going to switch you right now, last couple of minutes. A lot of hybrids and electric vehicles coming in here. Please tell me Dennis DeRosier's take on EVs.
All roads lead to electric vehicles. My take is that it's going to be a very, very long road. And look at the incentive issue in Ontario this past year as a good example. $14,000, Ford kills it in, I think it was July or August. You had to have the vehicle in your driveway, I believe, by September 18th. In the 2-3 months before it died, Ontarians were buying 1,000 plus EVs a month. And the months afterwards, they were buying a dozen. And so at this point, the fundamental problem with EVs in Canada, it's certainly in Canada and the United States, maybe not all jurisdictions in the world, is people just don't buy them very often. And so our total market share of EVs past year, which was a record, was still under 2%.
So I think we're going to have to see them maybe more adaptable for things like Canadian winters before we're going to see a better uptick.
I think it's still fundamentally a science issue. But then if I added up all of the announcements related to electrifying the fleets globally, it comes to over $300 billion. And when this industry, and that's going to be spent over 10, 15 years, but when this industry over a 10, 15 years period invests $300 billion to electrify their fleets, they're going to electrify them. And so we're heading there. This decade or this coming decade, yeah, the market share will go up. I think the real excitement is going to be 2030 to 2040, and even more exciting 2040 to 2050.
I'd like to thank Dennis DeRosiers for joining me today. We'll just head to a break. We'll be back after these messages. The Lemonade Car Show is sponsored by OMVIC, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator. The Lemonade Car Show is sponsored by OMVIC, Ontario's vehicle sales regulator. Welcome back to the Lemonade Car Show, brought to you by Crown and OMVIC. I'm your host, Lorraine Sommerfeld. We're going to ask the mechanic, Chris Muir, questions now. And John, you help too, because you're good at this stuff.
Thank you.
Let's take the first question.
My question is, I have a 2013 Porsche Cayenne that I just bought, a diesel, and so it's a 2013 with the warranty running out April 30th, 2019. Just wondering if it makes sense to get an aftermarket warranty at that time. I understand I can pick one up for 2 years at $3,000 from Lubrico. Just wondering if that's what I should do.
Extended warranties. I'm going to say what I think first, then you can go.
Okay.
I'm actually a fan now. I didn't used to be, but because of all the computer stuff, I really am on board with it now. However, I only like the manufacturer's warranties. I'm not a fan of third-party warranties because too many have disappeared overnight. Doesn't mean the one you may have purchased isn't good. I don't trust them, personally.
We agree too. At the APA, we agree. Your first choice by a country mile is to choose a manufacturer sponsored warranty or one that they administer themselves. Failing that, to go with a third party. In the case of this Porsche and some modern diesel engines that had some issues, having an extended warranty is better than having none. This is a Porsche, it's expensive repair, so maybe $3,000 seems a lot up front, but one repair, it's going to be gone. They're going to get their money with.
Your take on extended, you're the mechanic.
I very much think that a manufacturer's extended warranty is absolute bliss when something goes wrong, and I think they're worth every penny. Covering big things with OE parts, and for something like John said, $3,000 on a car where a little fault is $3,000, it is worth every cent for that peace of mind.
So, and we've talked about this in the past. Read a warranty for what it's not covering.
Yes.
And it's going to be more clear. I think they're more clear with manufacturers' warranties on that because they don't move the pieces around as
Know
much.
what you're buying and know how to get service. And does it include new parts or rebuilt parts or used parts? So
ask good questions.
ask extremely good questions.
Okay, I hope that helps you. Let's go to the next question.
Hi, this is Don from Edmonton, Alberta. I'm phoning in regards to my 2002 Dodge Durango. It has a 5.9 liter engine and a 46 RE transmission. The vehicle has 121,000 miles and has been well maintained. So I got a check engine light, and on that check engine light is the P0748 code, which is pressure solenoid A electrical. I replaced the solenoid and the transducer, filter, and fluid. And then a couple of days later, I still get a check engine light again, and it's again the P0748. I've been told that from a Chrysler dealership that the transconverter control solenoid could be also, but its rarity is that problem. So I don't know whether to spend the money to get a transconverter control solenoid and try that, and if that will possibly solve the problem. Thank you.
Okay. I didn't understand any of that, so you better know.
So Chrysler 42RE, RH, and 46RH and REs are notorious for what they call a solenoid pack. It's an entire pack of solenoids that controls the shift functionality of the transmission itself. They're available aftermarket as individual pieces, but from the manufacturer, they're a big pack that comes with everything you'd want, the transducer and several solenoids. Putting in that entire pack usually fixes up that problem without any further issue or anything else like that. Following the manufacturer's diagnostic to make sure you've fixed it properly is probably key to success there. But most of the time, if he hasn't replaced the governor solenoid, it's something to look at for sure.
So is this that he's maybe placing parts, like bits and pieces? But
He may
should
not have
maybe look at
replaced the
doing
entire tray assembly.
The whole thing.
That's
Otherwise,
right.
it could be one thing after the
Yep.
other. That's
And he wants to make sure that there isn't an internal leak that's throwing down transmission pressures and that it's functioning properly before throwing the electronic parts at it. It's calling a failure either in the electronic circuit, the solenoid itself, or one of the circuits that the solenoid controls.
I hope that helps you out in Edmonton. That's all the time we have for Lemonade. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Vic Crown, Hotspot Auto Parts, and Sound Insurance, and of course my guests, John Raymond and Chris Muir, and you viewers. That's all the time we have.